They lied and dropped dead. That's how this story is usually told. But if you think it's about lying, you missed what actually happened. This moment happens in the early church. People weren't just gathering, they were living differently, selling what they had and sharing everything. Not because they were forced to, but because they believed in what God was building. And in the middle of that, two people walked in, Ananias and Sapphira. And on the surface, what they did didn't even look wrong. They gave money, but something about it wasn't real. Here's where a lot of people get this wrong. God didn't strike them down because they kept some of the money. They were never required to give all of it. That was never the issue. The issue was this: they made it look like they gave everything when they didn't. They weren't just giving, they were performing. And that is where this gets uncomfortable, because they weren't outsiders. They weren't just random people coming in. They were inside the room, around the right people, in the right environment, and still something in them chose image over truth, which means proximity does not equal alignment. In other words, this wasn't a financial decision, it was a spiritual one, because that's what they were really doing. They were trying to attach themselves to something holy without actually surrendering to it. They wanted the image of obedience without the cost of it. And in that moment, they weren't just lying to God or to people. They were trying to lie in a place where God's presence was already moving. And what that exposed was this: they didn't just want to be a part of it, they wanted to be seen as a part of it. And the reason that this matters so much is because nothing about what they did would have stood out on the outside. If anything, it would have looked honorable, generous, committed, and that's what makes it dangerous. Because you can look right on the outside, you can look like you're doing everything that the Lord commanded, but still be completely misaligned underneath. And this is where it stops being about Ananias and Sapphira, because this didn't end in that room. People are still doing this, just quieter, saying things like God told me when he didn't, presenting a life that looks surrendered but isn't fully surrendered, wanting to be recognized as a faithful servant of God more than actually being faithful. And the really dangerous part is, it can look right on the outside, just like it did with them. They weren't judged for what they kept. They were judged for pretending that they didn't keep anything at all. And that means the real issue was never the money. It was never about their finances. It was their image, their vanity, how they were perceived by everyone else on earth. And people are still building that every single day.